The mop bucket wheels squeaked as Maria Rodriguez pushed it down the polished hallway of Fort Bradley Military Base at 42. She had been cleaning these same floors for 3 years now. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her green janitor's uniform hung loose on her small frame. To most people who passed by, she was invisible, just another cleaning lady doing her job. But Maria carried herself differently than the other staff. Her posture was straight, her movements precise. When she walked, there was something almost military about her step. The younger soldiers never noticed. They were too busy laughing and joking as they headed to the mess hall or their training exercises. "Hey, watch where you're going," Sergeant Mike Thompson shouted as he nearly bumped into Maria's cart near the main office. He was 25, cocky, and thought his 3 stripes made him important. "Can't you clean somewhere else? We've got real work to do here." Maria looked up at him with calm brown eyes. "Sorry, Sergeant, I'll move the cart." Thompson snorted. "Yeah, you better. Some of us actually serve our country instead of just mopping up after the people who do." The other soldiers with him laughed. Maria said nothing, but something flickered in her eyes, something that might have made Thompson think twice if he had been paying attention. Instead, she quietly moved her cleaning supplies out of the way. Lieutenant Jessica Barnes watched this interaction from across the hallway. She was one of the few officers who always treated Maria with respect. Something about the cleaning lady intrigued her. Maria never seemed bothered by the rude comments or dismissive treatment. She just did her job with quiet dignity. "You don't have to take that, you know," Jessica said softly when Thompson and his friends had moved on. Maria looked at her with a small smile. "It's okay, Lieutenant. Words don't hurt me. Still, you deserve better respect than that. Respect is earned," Maria replied, wringing out her mop. "And sometimes it takes time for people to see what's really there." Jessica nodded, though she wasn't sure what Maria meant by that. There was something mysterious about this woman. She spoke with more education than most janitors, and there was a confidence in her manner that seemed out of place for someone in her position. As the day went on, Maria continued her work. She cleaned the offices, emptied trash cans, and mopped floors. But she also listened. In her 3 years here, she had heard countless conversations. Soldiers talked freely around her, as if she wasn't even there. They discussed training exercises, complained about officers, and shared personal problems. Maria remembered everything. That afternoon, she was cleaning near the briefing room when she overheard Sergeant Thompson and his friends talking. "I'm telling you, the new training program is a joke," Thompson was saying. "All this talk about respecting everyone and treating people fairly. This is the army, not some feel-good summer camp." "Yeah," agreed Corporal Davis. "Back in the day, soldiers knew their place. Now we have to be nice to everyone, even the cleaning staff." "Exactly. That Rodriguez woman acts like she owns the place sometimes. Just because she's been here a few years doesn't mean she's anything special." Maria continued mopping, her face showing no emotion, but inside, she felt a familiar, stirring the same feeling she used to get before a difficult mission. Patience, she told herself. Your time will come later that evening. After most of the soldiers had gone to their barracks, Maria was finishing up in the main administrative building. Lieutenant Barnes was working late again, as she often did. "Maria, you don't have to stay so late," Jessica called out. "I can handle the rest." "It's no trouble, Lieutenant. I want to make sure everything is clean for tomorrow." Jessica watched as Maria carefully arranged the chairs in the briefing room. Every chair was perfectly aligned, every surface spotless. "You take real pride in your work." "I take pride in doing my job well, whatever that job might be," Maria replied. There was something in the way she said it that made Jessica pause. She had been wondering about Maria for months now. The woman was clearly intelligent and well-spoken. Her work was always perfect. But more than that, she seemed to understand the military environment in a way that went beyond just working here. "Maria, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Lieutenant. Have you always been a janitor?" Maria stopped what she was doing and looked at Jessica for a long moment. "No, Lieutenant, I haven't always been a janitor." "What did you do before?" Another pause. "I served my country in a different way." Before Jessica could ask what that meant, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Major Williams appeared, looking stressed and tired. "Barnes, I need you to review these personnel files tonight. We've got that big inspection coming up next week, and I want everything perfect." "Yes, sir," Jessica replied, taking the thick folder. Major Williams glanced at Maria and nodded briefly. He was one of the few officers who acknowledged her presence, though he rarely spoke to her directly. After he left, Maria returned to her cleaning, but Jessica noticed she was listening carefully to every word the Major had said. When Maria thought no one was watching, her expression changed. The humble, quiet cleaning lady disappeared for just a moment, replaced by someone who looked very much like a soldier analyzing intelligence. "Good night, Lieutenant," Maria said, gathering her supplies. "I hope your evening goes well." "Good night, Maria, and thank you." As Maria walked down the darkened hallway, her reflection in the polished floor showed a woman who moved with purpose and strength. Tomorrow would bring another day of being invisible, another day of listening and watching, but Maria Rodriguez was not just a cleaning lady. She was waiting for the right moment to reveal who she really was. The alarm clock in Maria's small apartment buzzed at 5:30 a.m., just as it had every morning for 3 years. She lived in a modest one-bedroom place just outside the base, furnished with simple furniture and very few personal items. But hidden in her bedroom closet, behind a row of work uniforms, was a small lockbox that held her most precious possessions. This morning, like many others, Maria opened that box and carefully lifted out a folded American flag. Beneath it were medals, commendations, and a photograph of herself in military dress uniform. The woman in the picture looked confident and proud, surrounded by other soldiers who clearly respected her. Captain Maria Rodriguez, U.S. Army Special Forces, retired. She held the photo for a moment, remembering the day it was taken. It was after her unit had successfully completed a dangerous rescue mission in Afghanistan. She had led 12 soldiers into enemy territory and brought them all home safely. The army had given her the Bronze Star for her bravery that day, but that was another life. That was before the accident that changed everything. Maria carefully put the items back in the box and got ready for work. She had chosen this job for a reason, though no one at Fort Bradley knew the real story. Working as a janitor allowed her to stay connected to the military world she loved. While remaining invisible, it also let her observe and learn about the current state of the army she had once served with distinction. At 6:30 a.m., she arrived at the base and began her daily routine. The morning was quiet, with only a few early rising officers moving through the halls. Maria preferred these peaceful hours before the chaos of the day began. She was cleaning the windows in the main corridor when she overheard 2 officers talking. In hushed tones, "The inspection next week is going to be brutal," Major Williams was saying to Captain Foster. "General Patterson is known for being extremely thorough. He'll look at everything: training records, personnel files, facility maintenance, everything." "I heard he's particularly tough on leadership," Captain Foster replied. "If he finds any problems with how we're running things here, heads will roll." Maria continued cleaning, but she was listening intently. General Patterson, she knew that name well. He had been a colonel when she served under him years ago. A good officer, but demanding. He expected excellence from everyone under his command. "The worst part is Sergeant Thompson," Major Williams continued. "His attitude has been getting worse lately. Yesterday I caught him being rude to one of the maintenance staff. We can't have that kind of behavior when the general arrives. Maybe you should talk to him. I've tried. He just doesn't seem to get it. He thinks being tough means being disrespectful." After the officers left, Maria thought about what she had heard. Thompson's behavior wasn't just annoying, it was potentially damaging to the base's reputation. In her years of experience, she knew that how soldiers treated everyone, including support staff, was a reflection of their true character and training. Later that morning, she was emptying trash cans in the training facility when she witnessed another incident. Thompson was conducting a class for new recruits, and his teaching style was harsh and demeaning. "Listen up, you pathetic excuses for soldiers," he shouted. "In the real army, nobody cares about your feelings. You follow orders and keep your mouth shut, and you show respect to your superiors, not to janitors and kitchen staff." The young recruits looked uncomfortable, but they didn't dare speak up. Maria watched from the corner where she was working, her jaw tightening. This kind of leadership went against everything she believed the army should represent. One of the recruits, a young woman named Private Johnson, accidentally dropped her rifle during the exercise. "Johnson, are you kidding me?" Thompson screamed. "My grandmother could handle a weapon better than you. Maybe you should go clean floors with the other women who can't cut it in the real military." The comment stung Maria deeply. She had commanded men and women in combat situations, had proven herself repeatedly in the most dangerous circumstances. But here she was, being used as an example of failure simply because of her current job. Private Johnson's face turned red with embarrassment. Maria could see the young woman was trying hard not to cry. "I'm sorry, Sergeant," Johnson whispered. "Sorry doesn't cut it in combat." Thompson continued his tirade. "When your life depends on your weapon, you better know how to handle it." Maria set down her cleaning supplies and quietly approached the group. The recruits noticed her first, their eyes widening slightly. Thompson was still yelling and didn't see her coming. "Excuse me, Sergeant," Maria said softly. Thompson spun around, his face red with anger. "What do you want? Can't you see I'm conducting training here?" "I can see that," Maria replied calmly. "I was wondering if you might want me to come back later to clean this area." "Yeah, you should come back later. Much later. We're doing important work here, not housekeeping." Maria nodded politely. "Of course, Sergeant, I understand the importance of proper training." Something in her tone made a few of the recruits look at her more carefully. There was authority in her voice, even though she was being respectful. "Good," Thompson said dismissively. "Now get lost so we can get back to turning these kids into real soldiers." As Maria gathered her supplies, she made eye contact with Private Johnson. The young woman saw something in Maria's eyes: understanding, experience, and quiet strength. Maria gave her a small, encouraging nod before leaving the room. That afternoon, Maria was working in the officers' club when Lieutenant Barnes approached her. "Maria, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Lieutenant. This morning, when you talked to Sergeant Thompson during his training session, there was something different about how you spoke to him. He sounded very professional." Maria paused. "In her cleaning, I tried to be respectful to everyone, Lieutenant. It was more than that. You sounded like you understood military training, like you had experience with it." Jessica was getting closer to the truth, and Maria could feel it. Part of her wanted to reveal everything, but she wasn't ready. "Not yet. I've been around the military for a while now," Maria said carefully. "You pick things up." Jessica nodded, but Maria could tell she wasn't completely satisfied with that answer. As the day ended, Maria reflected on what she had witnessed. Thompson's behavior was getting worse, and it was affecting the morale of the young soldiers under his command. She had seen this kind of toxic leadership before, and she knew it could poison an entire unit if left unchecked. The inspection was coming, and General Patterson would see right through Thompson's act. But would that be enough to protect soldiers like Private Johnson from his damaging influence? Maria looked at herself in the mirror of the women's restroom before leaving for the day. The face looking back at her was that of a cleaning lady, humble, invisible, underestimated. But behind her eyes was the mind of a decorated combat veteran who had never backed down from a fight. Soon, she thought, it would be time to remind everyone what a real soldier looked like. The weekend brought no rest for Maria. She spent Saturday morning at the local Veterans Affairs office, volunteering to help older veterans navigate the complex paperwork required for their benefits. It was something she had been doing quietly for 2 years, using her military knowledge to help men and women who had served their country. "Thank you so much, Maria," said Frank Peterson, a Vietnam veteran who struggled with the computer systems. "I don't know what I'd do without your help." "It's my pleasure, Mr. Peterson. We take care of our own." The way she said "our own" caught the attention of Linda Walsh, the VA coordinator. Linda had been wondering about Maria for months. The woman knew far too much about military procedures and benefits to be just a helpful civilian. "Maria, you seem to know an awful lot about military regulations," Linda said after Frank had left. "Did you serve?" Maria hesitated. She had kept her secret for so long that revealing it felt dangerous. But something about Linda's kind face and genuine concern made her want to trust her. "Yes," Maria said quietly. "I served for 15 years. 15 years? What branch? Army? Special Forces?" Linda's eyes widened. "Special Forces? But then why are you working as a janitor?" Maria sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her story pressing down on her. "I was injured in my last deployment," she began. "Not physically, but mentally. What they call PTSD now. After I came home, I couldn't handle the pressure of command anymore. I would wake up in cold sweats, thinking my soldiers were in danger. I couldn't make decisions without second-guessing myself." Linda nodded with understanding. She had heard similar stories from many veterans. "I took early retirement and tried different jobs, but nothing felt right. Then I heard about the opening at Fort Bradley. I thought maybe if I could stay around the military environment, but without the pressure of leadership, I might find some peace." "And did you?" Maria smiled sadly. "In some ways, yes. But it's hard to watch poor leadership and not be able to do anything about it. I see young soldiers being mistreated, and every instinct tells me to step in and protect them. Maybe you should." "Who would listen to a janitor?" Linda reached across and touched Maria's hand. "A real leader doesn't need a title to make a difference." That evening, Maria returned to her apartment with Linda's words echoing in her mind. She opened her lockbox again and pulled out her military records. 15 years of exemplary service. commendations for bravery, leadership, and dedication. She had trained hundreds of soldiers, led dangerous missions, and earned the respect of everyone she served with. But all of that felt like a different lifetime now. Monday morning brought new challenges at Fort Bradley. The inspection was only 4 days away, and tension was building throughout the base. Officers were reviewing procedures, NCOs were drilling their soldiers extra hard, and everyone was trying to make sure their areas were perfect. Everyone except Sergeant Thompson, Maria, was cleaning the administrative offices when she overheard Major Williams on the phone with his superior. "Yes, sir, I understand the importance of this inspection," Williams was saying, "but I'm concerned about some of our NCO leadership. Sergeant Thompson, in particular, has been problematic." There was a long pause as Williams listened. "No, sir, I haven't documented the incidents yet. I was hoping to handle it internally. But if General Patterson observes his behavior firsthand, it could reflect poorly on the entire base." Another pause. "Yes, sir, I'll handle it today." After Williams hung up, Maria continued her work, but her mind was racing. She knew that Thompson's behavior was putting the entire base at risk. More importantly, it was damaging the young soldiers under his command. Later that morning, she was cleaning the training facility when she witnessed the worst incident yet. Thompson was working with Private Johnson again, and his patience had completely run out. "Johnson, you're hopeless," he screamed. "You can't follow simple orders, you can't handle your equipment, and you clearly don't have what it takes to be a soldier." Private Johnson was struggling with a complex training exercise that involved coordinating with her team while managing multiple pieces of equipment. It was challenging even for experienced soldiers, but Thompson was treating her failure as a personal insult. "Maybe you should quit now and save everyone the embarrassment," Thompson continued. "Go find a job more suited to your abilities. I hear they're always hiring janitors." He gestured toward Maria, who was working quietly in the corner. Several of the other soldiers looked uncomfortable with the comment, but no one dared to speak up. Maria felt something snap inside her. She had watched this man destroy the confidence of young soldiers for too long. She had listened to his disrespectful comments about her and others like her. But this attack on Private Johnson, a young woman who was clearly trying her best, was the final straw. She set down her mop and walked toward the group. "Sergeant Thompson," she said firmly. Thompson turned around with an annoyed expression. "What now? I told you, we're training here. I can see that you're training, Sergeant, but I'm wondering if you might be open to a suggestion." Several of the recruits looked surprised. Maria's voice had changed completely. Gone was the humble, quiet tone of the cleaning lady. In its place was the clear, confident voice of someone accustomed to command. "A suggestion from you?" Thompson laughed. "Lady, the only suggestion I need from you is which floor cleaner works best on these tiles." "Actually," Maria said calmly, "I was going to suggest that you might get better results from Private Johnson if you focused on constructive feedback rather than personal attacks." The training room fell completely silent. Even Thompson seemed shocked by her directness. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dangerous. "Did you just tell me how to do my job? I'm simply observing that effective leadership requires building up your soldiers, not tearing them down." Thompson's face turned red with rage. "Effective leadership? You're a janitor. What could you possibly know about leadership?" Maria stood perfectly still. Her eyes locked on Thompson's when she spoke. Her voice was steady and clear. "I know that a good leader earns respect through competence and character, not fear and intimidation. I know that the strongest soldiers are created through challenge combined with support, not humiliation. And I know that how you treat people when you think no one important is watching reveals your true character." Thompson was speechless for a moment. Around the room, the young recruits were staring at Maria with new eyes. This was not the humble cleaning lady they thought they knew. "You have some nerve," Thompson finally said. "I'm going to report this to Major Williams. You'll be fired by the end of the day." "That's your choice, Sergeant," Maria replied calmly. "But before you do, you might want to ask yourself what General Patterson will think when he observes your teaching methods later this week." With that, Maria picked up her cleaning supplies and walked out of the room, leaving behind a group of stunned soldiers and one very angry NCO. As she walked down the hallway, Maria realized there was no going back now. She had stepped out of the shadows and revealed a glimpse of who she really was. The consequences would come soon enough, but for the first time in 3 years, she felt truly alive. Within an hour of the incident in the training room, Maria was called to Major Williams' office. She sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded calmly in her lap, waiting for what she knew was coming. Major Williams looked uncomfortable. He shuffled through some papers on his desk before finally looking up at her. Maria, I've received a complaint from Sergeant Thompson. He says you interfered with his training session and spoke to him in an insubordinate manner. That's accurate, Major. Williams seemed surprised by her straightforward admission. So you don't deny what happened? No, sir, I don't deny it. Can you explain why you felt it was appropriate to challenge a non-commissioned officer in front of his trainees? Maria considered her words carefully. Major, I've been working here for 3 years. In that time, I've observed many different leadership styles. Sergeant Thompson's approach is damaging to the soldiers under his command. That's not really your concern, Maria. Your job is to clean the facilities, not evaluate our training methods. You're right, Major. It's not my job. But sometimes we see things that go beyond our job descriptions. Williams leaned back in his chair, studying her. Maria, you've been an exemplary employee. You're reliable, thorough, and you've never caused any problems before. That's why this situation is so puzzling to me. I understand your confusion. Major, is there something you want to tell me? Something that might help me understand why you felt compelled to intervene? This was the moment Maria had been dreading and anticipating for 3 years. She could continue to hide behind her janitor's uniform, apologize, and hope to keep her job, or she could trust this decent officer with the truth. Major, there is something I should tell you. But first, may I ask you a question? Go ahead. When General Patterson arrives for the inspection, what do you think he'll be looking for? Williams frowned. Standard inspection procedures, training effectiveness, facility maintenance, personnel, readiness, and how do you think he'll evaluate the quality of leadership at this base? He'll observe our officers and NCOs in action, review training records, talk to the soldiers. Exactly. And when he talks to those young recruits, what do you think they'll tell him about Sergeant Thompson's leadership style? Williams was quiet for a long moment. You're suggesting that Thompson could be a liability during the inspection. I'm suggesting that good leadership creates confident, motivated soldiers. Poor leadership creates the opposite. And you feel qualified to make that assessment because Maria took a deep breath. Because I spent 15 years in the army, Major, the last 8 as an officer in Special Forces. The silence in the room was deafening. Williams stared at her as if she had just told him she was from another planet. You were an officer. Captain Maria Rodriguez, retired. I have my DD-2-214 and service records at home if you need to verify. Williams stood up and walked to the window, processing this information. Special Forces? Yes, sir. Why didn't you tell us this when you applied for the job? Because I wasn't ready to be a soldier anymore. Major, I needed time to heal from some difficult experiences overseas. Working here as support staff allowed me to stay connected to the military family while I figured out who I was supposed to be now. Williams turned back to face her. And in 3 years, you never once felt compelled to reveal your background? Not until today. Not until I watched a young soldier being destroyed by the kind of toxic leadership that I spent my career fighting against. Thompson doesn't know about your background. No one does, or no one did. Williams sat back down, his mind clearly racing. Maria, Captain Rodriguez, this changes everything. I need to report this to my commanding officer. There will be questions about why you concealed your military service. I understand. Major, I'm prepared to face the consequences. But first, I need to ask your assessment of Sergeant Thompson. Is it based on what you observed today, or have there been other incidents? For the next 30 minutes, Maria detailed everything she had witnessed over the past 3 years. Thompson's treatment of support staff, his demeaning comments about women in the military, his toxic approach to training, and his complete lack of respect for anyone he considered beneath his rank. Williams took notes throughout her report, his expression growing more serious with each incident she described. Why didn't you report any of this before? Who would have listened to a janitor's complaints about a sergeant? Williams nodded grimly. You're probably right, but now I have to decide what to do with this information, and with you. Before he could continue, there was a knock on the door. Lieutenant Barnes entered, looking concerned. Major, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Sergeant Thompson is in the training facility, and he's completely lost control. The recruits are terrified. Williams and Maria exchanged glances. What happened? Williams asked. Apparently, he's been ranting about the cleaning staff for the past hour. He's told the recruits that they need to learn to recognize insubordination from anyone, regardless of their position. He's using Private Johnson as an example of what happens when soldiers don't maintain proper respect for authority. Maria stood up. Major, with your permission, I'd like to go to the training facility. Maria, I don't think that's a good idea. Major, those young soldiers don't deserve to suffer because of the conflict between Thompson and me. If I can help diffuse the situation. You're not a soldier anymore, Maria. You're a civilian employee. But I'm still someone who cares about those kids. Williams considered this. All right, but you go as an observer only. Do not engage with Thompson directly. As they walked toward the training facility, Lieutenant Barnes looked at Maria with curiosity. There's something different about you today, she said. Double quotes, yes, Lieutenant, I suppose. There is. They could hear Thompson's voice echoing down the hallway before they even reached the training room. When they looked inside, they saw him pacing back and forth in front of a group of very uncomfortable-looking recruits. This is what happens when people forget their place, he was shouting. When janitors think they can tell sergeants how to do their jobs. When civilians think they understand military discipline. Private Johnson was standing at attention, but tears were streaming down her face. The other recruits looked like they wanted to run. This soldier, Thompson continued, pointing at Johnson, represents everything that's wrong with today's military. Weak, emotional, unable to handle real pressure. That's when Maria made her decision. She had spent 3 years hiding who she was, trying to heal from her past while these young people suffered under poor leadership. No more. She stepped into the room. Sergeant Thompson, she said clearly, that's enough. Thompson spun around, his face twisted with rage. I thought I made it clear that you're not welcome here. You did. But I'm not here as a janitor. Sergeant, something in her voice made everyone in the room freeze. Maria stood tall, her shoulders back, her bearing unmistakably military. I'm here as a soldier who won't stand by and watch you destroy these young people's confidence and faith in the army they chose to serve. The room fell completely silent. Even Thompson seemed momentarily speechless. Maria looked at each of the recruits in turn, her eyes conveying strength and reassurance. You are all good soldiers, she said firmly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Then she turned back to Thompson, and when she spoke, it was with the voice of command that had once led men and women into battle. And you, Sergeant, have forgotten what it means to be a leader. The training room remained frozen in stunned silence. Thompson's face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear as he processed what had just happened. The recruits stood perfectly still, sensing that they were witnessing something extraordinary but not understanding what it was. Major Williams stepped into the room behind Maria. Sergeant Thompson, dismiss your trainees now. But Major, we're in the middle of now. Sergeant Thompson reluctantly gave the order, and the recruits filed out quickly, clearly relieved to escape the tension. Private Johnson was the last to leave, and as she passed Maria, she whispered, "Thank you." Once the room was empty except for the 3 of them, Williams closed the door. Sergeant Thompson, we need to have a serious discussion about your conduct. But first, there's something you need to know about Ms. Rodriguez. Thompson looked between Williams and Maria, still trying to process what had just happened. What's going on here, Major? Maria, would you like to tell him, or should I? Maria straightened her shoulders and looked Thompson directly in the eyes. My name is Captain Maria Rodriguez, United States Army Special Forces, retired. I served for 15 years, including multiple combat deployments. I've led soldiers in some of the most dangerous situations our military faces. Thompson's mouth fell open. That's impossible. You're a janitor. I chose to work as support staff here after my retirement, but my rank and experience don't disappear just because I put on a different uniform. Williams stepped forward. Sergeant, Captain Rodriguez has provided me with detailed observations about your leadership methods over the past 3 years. Her assessment is that your approach is detrimental to the soldiers under your command and potentially damaging to this unit's reputation. Thompson looked like he was going to be sick. 3 years. You've been watching me for 3 years. I've been working here for 3 years, Maria corrected. I've observed many leaders during that time. Most of them have been excellent examples of what military leadership should be. You have not. But I was just doing my job, Sergeant. All of it. The cleaning, yes. But also watching out for the welfare of soldiers who couldn't protect themselves from toxic leadership. Williams consulted his watch. Sergeant, you're dismissed for the remainder of the day. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 0800. We'll discuss your future at this base. After Thompson left, looking dazed and defeated, Williams turned to Maria. Well, Captain, you've certainly complicated my week. I'm sorry about that, Major, but I'm not sorry about standing up for those kids. Don't apologize. You did the right thing. The question now is what happens next. Before Maria could answer, Lieutenant Barnes returned. looking excited. Major, I just received word that General Patterson will arrive a day early. He'll be here tomorrow morning instead of Thursday. Williams ran his hand through his hair. Perfect. Just perfect. There's something else, sir. Apparently, the general specifically requested to observe our junior enlisted training programs. He wants to see how we're developing our newest soldiers. Maria and Williams exchanged glances. If General Patterson observed Thompson's training methods, it would be a disaster for the entire base. Major, Maria said quietly. May I make a suggestion? At this point, Captain, I'm open to any ideas you have. Let me conduct tomorrow's training session with the recruits. Give me a chance to show them what real military leadership looks like. Williams stared at her. You're not an active duty soldier, Maria. I can't just put you in charge of training, but you can have me assist as a subject matter expert. I may be retired, but my knowledge and experience are still valid. And when General Patterson asks who you are, I'll tell him the truth, all of it. Lieutenant Barnes looked confused. I'm missing something here, aren't I? Williams quickly filled her in on Maria's background. Barnes' eyes grew wider with each detail. So you're saying our janitor is actually a decorated Special Forces captain, was Maria corrected. I'm retired. But your skills aren't retired, Barnes said thoughtfully. Major, this could actually work in our favor. If the general sees our newest recruits being trained by someone with Captain Rodriguez's experience and credentials, Williams considered, this it's highly irregular. So is the current situation, Maria pointed out. Major, those recruits have been damaged by months of poor leadership. Give me one day to remind them why they joined the army in the first place. That evening, Maria went home and opened her lockbox for the third time that week, but this time, she didn't just look at her medals and commendation. She put on her dress uniform for the first time in 3 years, that it still fit perfectly. The next morning, she arrived at Fort Bradley at 0600, 2 hours before she usually started work. But instead of her green janitor's uniform, she wore her military dress blues, complete with ribbons and decorations that told the story of her distinguished career. The guard at the gate did a double take when he saw her, but Major Williams had already left word that Captain Rodriguez was to be admitted. She made her way to the training facility, where the recruits were gathering for their morning session. When Private Johnson saw her, the young woman's eyes widened. In amazement, ma'am, is that ... are you? Good morning, Private Johnson. I'm Captain Rodriguez. I'll be working with your training group today. One by one, the other recruits noticed her and snapped to attention. These were the same young soldiers who had been demoralized and intimidated just yesterday. Now they stood tall, responding instinctively to the presence of a real leader. At ease, Maria said warmly. Today, we're going to learn what military excellence really looks like. For the next 2 hours, Maria led the recruits through training exercises that challenged them while building their confidence. She corrected mistakes with constructive feedback, celebrated successes enthusiastically, and showed them that discipline and respect could coexist with encouragement and support. A0930. General Patterson arrived for his inspection, accompanied by Major Williams and his staff. The general was exactly as Maria remembered him, tall, distinguished, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. As they approached the training area, they could hear Maria's voice clearly instructing the recruits. Remember, the strength of our military comes not from fear or intimidation, but from the courage and